We'll open up for questions for both speakers, so I'll just invite them both back. I think the microphones are on this. Any questions?
Hi, this is Doris Hamburg. Both talks were really great. Thank you very much. Thinking about preserving and archives and these, let's say, the more and more storage that's in one small amount, how do you see the best, aside from backup, but do you think it's we want to keep putting our data in smaller and smaller confines, so to speak, or should we be considering other scenarios?
Yeah. I'll take a chance with it. When you think about 35 terabytes in a single cartridge, you could get a simple byte error, and you might lose $10. I mean, there's no recovery for that. In a hard disk drive or a tape, a high-density storage tape, if you bring it to an archivist and you say, can you recover this? There is no such thing as recovery. So there is no answer other than redundancy.
I just want to add, one of my nightmares is the terabyte tape monster. When our engineers first started telling me, oh, you're going to be able to store a terabyte on a tape, that actually wasn't a good moment for me. For the same reason that Ron just said, a catastrophic failure at the beginning of that tape is just not good. And so, and I should have probably said this, if you can have multiple copies and spread it out on technologies, that would be what I would recommend.
Hi, I'm Steph DiCato from NC State. I'm over here. How reliable is cloud storage? I don't know that much about it, so.
Well, currently today, if you've noticed in the 99.999, I think they're 2 decimal places away of the reliability that you currently have in your electrical system. So I think the rule of thumb is if you're moving data, and I don't care whether it's in a single drive or from one storage box to another, you're putting data at risk. Now there's lots of error recovery systems in place, but you have to hope the probability is they're all working at the same time. Is it good storage? Well, I don't know at this stage of the game that I would invest in putting a major archive on a cloud. One of the things that cloud people don't talk about today is what means of backup they're using. I think they're so involved in selling the new technology and trying to make it happen that they're not considering backup. But if you're an archivist, I mean, that's what you've got to be worried about.
Question for both of you. It worked. Thanks very much for giving us a really good overview of the risks involved in storage media. That's mostly what you were focusing on, as well as environmental issues, redundancy, backup, and all of those mitigation strategies. What about the risk to format obsolescence?
I consider obsolescence to be the media, the hardware, the software, and firmware, as well as the format. So those all need to be addressed, and I recommend to my science management staff that that be considered within a 5-year plan. They typically don't want to deal with any of them at any time. They just think, I do my science, I put it away, and I'm on to something else. But even 5 years could be too long for some of those. But it's a good time frame that at least they have an idea that they need to deal with all of those. Firmware, not quite so much, but probably my nightmare media had been 4mm, that we determined there were at least 6 firmware implementations of the 4mm drives. So sometimes that comes into play also. So yes, I recognize your point. And in our area, it's at least within a 5-year period you need to address that.
And how do you guys address it? How do you guys address it?
It depends a little bit on the observational record themselves. If it is born digital, that's one area that is a little bit different. If it's scanned, we're actually scanning all of our aerial photography, which is 8+ million frames. That's projected to take us 10 years. And we did community research and selected TIFF format. I think at some point we'll have to reevaluate that before we're done scanning. So we do try to look at community-wide uses. For our satellite data, we're using GeoTIFFs. We're embedding the geographics into the TIFF header. If you can't read the GeoTIFF, you can still read the TIFF. So we've gone through research with our user communities.
So I had to hold my question, so if you don't mind. So one question I have for you is on the data loggers that you showed, that the curves for between 29 to 2011, they were sinusoidal, and it looked like their highs were consistent at the same time. So was it the summertime, or was it just, is that what it is?
May through September.
Okay. Because I too, when we were doing similar studies here, we found during summer correlation of the highs and lows. Although we have air conditioning systems, it was quite fascinating to see consistencies all across. The one question I have for Ron is, you showed that 35 terabyte possibly the next generation tape to be on that physical device as small as you showed. Another key thing is about how do we manage heat mitigation, because as you know, in the older generations where we would have cooling systems and huge servers and all, and now everything is getting compressed and you're getting to small devices, and then there is all kinds of CPU computations taking place at the back end. So how do you handle that? How is the industry handling the heat issue?
Question number one, I don't think IBM is going to tell me when they're planning to release the product. So I don't know that I can help you with it. I do know the good part of the technology, which I didn't mention, was that the new technology in this 35 terabyte cartridge is barium ferrite. And we have experience with that, and we know what a good archival medium it is. So I was glad to see that. In terms of cooling, I don't know whether you know it, that when this version of Intel products came out, the computers were running so hot that they were building and selling cooling systems for your desktop computers. I think you're going to see more of that. There's technology steps that are being put in place. The use of MEMS, which is microelectronic devices, things like that will be going into new generation technology. So, but you'll be paying for it.
Hello. Yes, my name is Andrei Sitov. I'm a Russian reporter here in Washington, D.C. I was recently listening to a presentation by this internet guru, from the Google. And then he mentioned the notion of the digital vellum, which intrigued me just as an interesting word combination. I started thinking about it, talked to some friends, and they told me, you know what, it's a huge problem everywhere in the world, including Russia. So if you can, look into it. So this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to look into it. From what you just described, I understand there is no digital vellum at this point. My question to you is, are we looking for a digital vellum, for something that will keep forever and ever, regardless of the migration from format to format, from hardware to hardware? Are you even looking for a solution like this, or are we doomed to be forever migrating from one to the other without end? Thank you.
I have a suggestion for you. It's more philosophical than it is practical. There's a very good lecture series online. It's called TED Series. If you haven't seen it, you probably should. And there are 2 or 3 pieces in which, I forgot who the futurist is, who actually makes a projection of where it's all going and what he believes it's coming to in terms of digital storage.
I mean, it's all right to talk about this in philosophical and futuristic terms, but this gentleman works for the government. You work for probably government clients or corporate clients who are practical people. What I'm asking about are practical solutions.
I should tell you, without any question, I think everybody knows it, with budgets tightening up, people aren't spending too much time on archiving or money on archiving. So I think the archiving business has taken a back seat in the last couple of years, which is one of the reasons I honestly think that, not too many of the people who build drives and tape storage devices think too much about archivists, because it represents a relatively small part of the market. But in terms of storage and growth, I don't see any end to it. I mean, I see Moore's Law, continuing just about every field of storage devices. But you can also ask, what's the improvement in terms of error correction and error processing? I think that's coming along. Unfortunately, it's not keeping pace with the advancement in technology. I don't have a solution for you. Sorry about that.
Could I ask a question of John?
I'm going to address this one first
okay.
a little bit more. I also don't have a practical solution, but am keeping my eyes open. There are optical media that are proclaiming to be 1,000-year stability. It's a little hard to prove that. But I mean, there are things that are being introduced that may have validity. And I also wanted to share something. I was talking with these two gentlemen at lunch. There was a large user community of observational data that several years ago seriously, and they managed their own satellites, and they seriously considered downlinking the electronic data, writing it out to film, and dumping the electronic data itself. And so when you would need to use an image in an electronic form, you would rescan the film. And they were considering that because of the records management storage costs, and the fidelity of the film would be much cheaper over the long term. They decided not to go down that route, but it was quite an interesting discussion that they considered this very seriously, to go back to film, even though we started electronic.
My question goes back to, this is Kitty Nicholson from the National Archives Conservation Lab. You talked about doing digital scans of your aerial photos. And I want to ask if you're considering keeping the aerial photos as one of your copy sets that is persistent, or if you're not. There's some talk about digital preservation copies, but sometimes it seems like a contradiction in terms.
And we don't have to deal with that, because once it's scanned and verified, we'll be sending all the film to the National Archives. So I don't have to address your base point there. Our scientists, we actually, to determine our scan rates, we invoked a panel of 6 scientists and gave them 34 geographic locations across the U.S., the lower 48 and Alaska, and then gave them 7, 14, and 25 micron scans. And it was quite interesting, the outcome that we got. And one of the side opinions was that they felt that they would not have a need to go back to the film if we could give them an adequate digital scan. So while that won't affect the ultimate disposition of film, because that will go to the National Archives and we are sending it there, it was interesting the scientists have already made that leap, because they could utilize this with another image and very quickly overlay them, versus the film they'd have to scan it themselves or put it on a light table, or it just, and the processing time in projects now is such that they're under such time constraints, they need that quickness. So I don't know that I'd say our scans replace the film, but I'm not sure that all users will take the time to go back to the original source if they feel the digital is of adequate representation.
If there are no further questions, I'd like to conclude the session. We have a break, short break, And we can continue our questions with the speakers that would like to give us answers.